Hi friends, and welcome back into my studio. If you are new here, my name is Tammy Ernest and I am a Longarm quilter. And here on my channel, I like to share customer finishes as well as my own personal projects. And if you saw my newsletter over the weekend, and if you didn't, you can sign up down below. Our great news arrived this weekend. Our newest grandbaby was born over the weekend. Evelyn May was born on Saturday, weighing in at 8 pounds and 4 ounces, 21 inches long. She is doing wonderful. So excited about that. Thank you for all your well wishes. And it's been a wonderful few days here. So today, because of that, I do not have any personal sewing to share with you today. So it is going to be an all customer finish video. So I hope you enjoy it. This is Sara's quilt, and this is made with all log cabin blocks. Now, Sara said she started this one in 2024. She bought this as a kit, a pre-cut kit from Jordan Fabrics. And then she said after Donna's death earlier this year, she decided to finish this in honor of her. So this uses all Shoreline fabric, which is Camille Roskelley. Now on Jordan Fabrics, they do sell pre-cut kits. So your pieces are already cut and put together for you in a bundle. Now you'll have to watch some of the kits. This one, there are 64 log cabin blocks. In looking at some of the kits on Jordan Fabrics, a lot of the patterns are just 12 log cabin blocks. Now they do give you lots of layout choices, and I'm going to talk about some layout choices with log cabin blocks here in just a second. So they also have what's called a curvy log cabin, and I'll talk about that one again in just a second. But you can choose the fabrics that you want. They have them already in kits. So like right now, they have some fall themed ones, not the exact Shoreline ones that you see here. So I assume those kits change throughout the year depending on what fabric lines are available. So you'll want to check that out from Jordan Fabrics. All right, log cabin block. This is a very traditional block in quilting. One of the first ones you will start, maybe not first ones. I mean, you got some easier ones like 4 patches and 9 patches and those kind of things. But log cabin ranks up there pretty high in the first blocks that you might create if you're progressing through quilting quilt blocks. So a log cabin block, the block, see if you can see it, is right here. Oops. So dark on one side, light on the other. So where you're seeing this big shape here, that's actually 4 log cabin blocks all coming together, and that's all of the lighter sides coming together, and then that's how you get that diamond shaped right there. So the log cabin block is right here. And how you create a log cabin block, you start out with a center square. On that center square you add another square the same size, and you continue to add rectangles all the way around like you're building your log cabin, one log on top of another, and it just goes round and round. So each time your width of your fabric is staying the same normally. In this one it is. All of the widths of this one are 2 inches, and but the length of your strip will change each time, because here where you're starting with a center dark blue one, then you're adding a white one. The next white one that you add will be longer because it's got to span both of the widths of those 2 blocks joined together. And then you have a blue, and then a light, and then we move to darker blue, and then a darker blue, and a white, and then we move to the darker, and we finished with the white, so I was off on that one. So white and white, the dark blue, white, oh, here it is. And then we have the final dark blue and the dark blue all the way up there. So that is the block. So traditionally you do lights on one side, darks on the other. I like that this progresses. We have a dark center, and then we do one row of lighter blues and then move out to the darker blues. Every one of Sara's blocks is exactly the same. So the same prints are in the same spot on each log cabin block. And that doesn't always have to be. You can do this very scrappy, even if you're doing the same colorways. You could be doing blues, but have different fabrics all over in all the log cabins. And then how this design is created is turning 4 log cabin blocks with the light part all to the center. Now what that does is you're also creating 4 dark ones to the center, and then you get this pattern. It's just beautiful. But log cabin blocks are so versatile because depending on how you turn the blocks, you get totally different shapes or totally different designs. So you can change this so you have darks. They call it a split rail. No, that would be different. Split rail is different. I'll show you that. I was getting off there. But you can have it where the log cabins are oriented so it looks like it's a zigzag down. You can get some, and you know, even where it's radiating out from the middle, and I'll show you some of those. All right, so I wanted to gather some inspiration for you so that you can start on some log cabin block quilts. First of all, I found a free PDF on the Fat Quarter Shop. This is called Classic and Vintage Series. This was for Hope Bloom's log cabin block. So the blocks on this pattern, again, this is a free PDF. The finished blocks on this one measure 8.5 inches square, and this is using 2-inch widths of fabric. Now, what this one does is that it shows you, and I've never done this, and I've always wondered how this worked. So they give you the measurements, but if you can see down here, the fabrics we are adding are just a little bit bigger, okay? So what you do, and then here you can see again, the fabric that's added across the top, that H one is a little bit wider than the actual blocks that are already joined together. So what they are doing with this pattern is you add your first row all the way around that center square, and then you use the Creative Grids square up ruler. And this one, there are different sizes. This is for 8.5-inch blocks. So you are using the 8-inch Creative Grids log cabin trim tool. And I don't know if you can see that top picture. Then it shows you how you are squaring it up. You've got the center square right there in the middle, and then you're trimming up that first row all the way. Actually, you're trimming up all of it, aren't you? Yeah, you're trimming up the whole block to 8 inches square. I was thinking you'd have to do just one row at a time, but it's saying that you can trim it up that way. I've never done this. When I've done log cabin blocks, I've always cut them to the exact size. So if I start out 1.5 and then I'm adding another, or let's say 2. So I add a 2-inch and a 2-inch, and then this one would need to be 2-inch 4, that would be 3.5. So then this would be cut at 3.5. This one is cut at 3.5, and I always cut them the exact size. Now sometimes pressing can be a little part of the problem in getting all of your blocks to turn out correctly, because it just is a little wonky. So you have to be very careful with your pressing to make sure they're nice and square, and maybe even trim up after each one. But when I have done log cabin blocks, I've always done the exact size. In using the Creative Grids log cabin trim tool rulers, whatever size of log cabin block you're wanting to make, then you can trim it up to the exact size afterwards. And I assume that is by making your pieces just a little bit longer. So this starts with a 2.5. This one is for 2.5 inner square with the pink, and then okay, and I see on this one, notice on this one that center square is larger than all of the other surrounding ones, where in Sara's quilt the center square is the same width, the same size as all of the widths around it. So there's an option. This is a free PDF, but this is where you would learn how to use one of the Creative Grids log cabin rulers, and there are videos that go along with that you can look at on there. All right, I wanted to show you a different one. This also is a free PDF. Now this one is using a jelly roll, so your strips are 2.5 inches, and on this one you're only adding you're starting with your center square, but we're only adding the logs, if you want to call them, on one side of that center square. So let me show you. Here is the front. This is called Jelly Roll Cabin. Now notice right here. Here is what on Sara's quilt would be the center square, but notice how we're only adding logs on one side. So then what this pattern does is you are making 4 of those, and you are joining 4 of those, you can see right here, with sashing and a cornerstone. And then you're creating this block here. So a different version of a log cabin. You're creating the logs only on one side of that starting square, and then you're adding sashing, and you get a beautiful quilt that looks just like that. So that could be an option as well. This is starting with 2.5-inch strips, and that is the Jelly Roll Cabin quilt. Now I found another one. This is called Jelly Cabin Fever. Now some of you don't like to do, you don't want to trim it up with the rulers, you don't want to cut exact size. We have more options. The next option would be to use foundation paper. The Fat Quarter Shop does sell log cabin foundation paper that you can make exact log cabins. So with foundation paper, what you're doing is you are tearing off a piece of a thin paper that you're actually sewing your fabric directly to, and then you peel that paper right off. So your pieces are cut larger. You can use scraps, whatever it is, as long as it covers the area on that foundation that you're adding the next section. Then you stitch on the line, you press that back, you add your next one, and as long as you're stitching on those lines and then you pull the papers off later and trim it up, then that's how you can create that. So this is a layout option for using the, what size? The 12-inch log cabin foundation paper. Now, notice the pattern that they create from this one, almost a pinwheel design. So totally different, not like this one, not like the others that I've shown you, but by laying those log cabin blocks out in a pinwheel fashion, and here is the, it's upside down. Here is the layout for those. So notice we have 2 log cabins face the same way. Then here we have them, the darks back to back. And we're doing that for each of the 4 quadrants, and then when we put that together, you get that neat pinwheel, all from log cabin blocks. So you don't even, this can be just an inspiration of making a different layout. You know, you can make the same blocks, but you can lay this exact quilt, this exact blocks, you can lay it out in this fashion and get a totally different design. All right, I did also find an entire book. This is called Creative Log Cabin Quilts. And this is by Annie's Quilting, and I love, love, love that cover photo. Now notice on this one, you have the center star right here. And I haven't seen this book. I'm just going off the cover and looking at the pattern. You have the center star. Around that right there are log cabin blocks. And they are done in a very neutral way. And they're actually doing separate rows. So you're starting with a almost a cream color, what it looks like, a cream color square. You're adding 1 row of either a gingham, like a beige and tan gingham, and then another row of the cream, and then another row of the beige and tan. So let me get that in close so you can see. Do you see those log cabins? Again, they are only built on one side of your starting block, not all the way around, which is a version of the log cabin blocks. It's done in a very neutral colorway, and then alternating the white and the beige, and the white and the beige, or cream and beige. Now, the other blocks that you're seeing in this quilt here are courthouse steps. Very similar to log cabin, except you're building it on one side and then the other. You're not going all the way around that center square, and you're not building on just one side of the center square. You are starting with a center square right here, and then you're adding on either side. You add the light, so notice here, you're adding the lighter colors on the sides, and your colored ones are building, and that's called courthouse steps. I said courthouse stairs, but courthouse steps. So combining a log cabin block with a courthouse steps, and you get a very unique design like that. Now this says there are 10 log cabin quilts in this book. And the reason I pulled this out is just so that you can see different options with log cabin blocks. So in the top left-hand corner, notice they have added the log cabin blocks just as separate blocks. There's really no, it's very scrappy. It's not done lights on one side, darks on the other. It's just building those fabrics around. And then they alternate that, or not alternate, but each row they're adding in a star block as well. So it gives it much more of a scrappy look, but those are log cabin blocks. Then let's look at this one right here. This one is built, the black and red one is built with, you're starting with a center square, and then you're making a star block around that. And then outside of that, we're adding a row of black, and then a row of, you're building around that center star. So you have a center block instead of just being a solid square. We actually have a block. So instead of just starting with a dark blue here, this could be, it would need to be bigger, obviously, but you could have a heart. I think Chelsea Stratton has done some quilts like that where she has a heart block in the center and then is building her log cabin around that. But you can start out with a pieced block in the middle and build your log cabin. That's what that black and red one is. It's a piece block, and then it's white on one side of the log cabin, and the other side alternates between the black and then the gray and then the black. And then notice when you put that together with, you've got some sashing blocks in there too, the beautiful design. So those are some other log cabin quilts. These are all made with log cabin blocks, some a little more complicated than the other. Notice the small table topper there. Doesn't that look like the log cabins are in a circle shape? So Jordan Fabrics also sells some kits that they call Curvy Log Cabin. How that is created is those colored strips are larger than the white strips on the opposite side of the log cabin. That circle right there, that red circle, is made of 4 log cabin blocks all joined in the center. All 4 log cabin blocks with the reds all pointed together, and it gives that curve shape because the red strips on there are wider than the white ones that are creating the other side of that block. And Jordan Fabrics does sell some kits that do that curved log cabin. So lots and lots of choices. Log cabin is such a versatile block. You can do so many things. So that is the this book, Creative Log Cabins, if you want to see some new ones. And then I dropped my other papers, so hold on just a second. Okay, I wanted to show you a couple other ideas in how to lay out log cabin blocks. This is a pattern by Fig Tree Quilts. This pattern actually uses honey buns. Now honey buns are only 1.5 inch wide, but it is a pre-cut, so you're using the entire line, so you're getting all of the different fabrics, but in a pre-cut, already cut 1.5 inch strips, so you don't have to worry about all that. But notice the different layouts. So in this bottom one down here, we have all the log cabins. The dark are facing one direction and the light are facing the other. That's one layout. And then here on this other one, are those the same? Those are the exact same. But notice how we're getting concentric circles. Is that the right word? Around. They're not circles, but you know what I'm talking about by the layout. So the center one, we are laying all of the dark parts of those 4 log cabin blocks towards the center. The next row out, we have the white part is joining in with the white parts of this center block, okay? And then we're putting all of those darks together to create that box around there. So this is done in log cabin blocks. And then it is not set on point. It's not set on point. It looks like it's set on point. It is not set on point because your log cabin blocks are that. So if I hold it like this, can you see? It's not set on point. We have a log cabin block with the colored up. Here the colored's down, but it's pointing the other direction. We have the colored up and the colored up. It's laid out in rows. And that's how you get that. Just log cabin blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 36 blocks. 36 log cabin blocks, and then it's got a couple borders. Now Sara's is made, there are 16 blocks, each with 4 log cabins in each one. No sashing at all, no borders at all. So she has made a total of 64 log cabin blocks, put them together in groups of 4 to create this design, and then join those rows together. So we have 4 rows of 4, and it makes this beautiful quilt. So many choices. One more. This is a quilt kit, and notice this one, log cabin blocks, but we also have star blocks in there. So you're getting the stripe effect because we have these blue and white star blocks, but this block right here and this block right here, those are log cabin blocks with red in the center. Now red is the traditional center of a log cabin block. And even if you've read any books about the Underground Railroad, how they would use quilts like this, they would change the color of that center block, and that was an indication to slaves whether it was safe to stop at that house or not. Very, very interesting. So, but how you're creating this. This is a log cabin block, red in the center. It alternates the light blue, dark blue, and then the light blue. The other side is all the white prints. And then notice how we're building this. We have a log cabin block, a star block, a log cabin block, a star block. And when you do it that way, you get those stripe effect down the side. Beautiful, beautiful. Log cabin blocks and star blocks. That's all you're doing there. And that other one that I showed you was log cabin blocks and star blocks, but done in a scrappy fashion. But if you did it more planned with colored on one side and the white on the other, you can use the same blocks and get a very different design. So many options. So fun. All right, so let's move on to pantograph. On this one, Sara asked for ginger flower, and she said loose, open, and drapey, please. So she wanted it to stay very soft, very open, very large pantograph. So this is the pantograph that we went with. Let me take it out of the plastic. I keep these printouts in a 3-ring binder, and they're in plastic, so that's why it was. Okay, so this is ginger flower. A nice loopy, 3 loops, and then you, then it has a 5-petaled flower, and then loop, then you have 3 loops, and you go into the flower again. Very cute. So this one, because she asked for it very large and loopy, let me pull this in. You can see it on the blue, very easy. I'll show you the back of her quilt in just a second. So you can see this very large. That flower is much larger than my fist. So very different compared to this. Not very different, but just very large. So you can change a pantograph just in changing the size of it. Okay, and very large, the loops, very large, the 3 large loops, and then we go into the flower again. I did make this 12 inches tall, was how large the pantograph was. When I pulled it into Pro Stitcher, it was at 16. Now, while my throat space is 20 inches, at 16 inches, I still felt like I just wanted to give myself a little more cushion. Because it doesn't nest up terribly much, because I want to, again, when I am sizing a pantograph, I want the size, the spacing between the rows to be very similar to the spacing in the rows. So notice this one, I have a very wide space between this flower and the loop. A lot of space between the loops, the line here and the line here. So when I am shrinking up this design, I want this loop to be about the same distance between these 2 lines as it is within one single line going across. So it doesn't, and this pantograph doesn't nest up terribly much. You can see by the printout, you could shrink it a little bit, but just the nature of the loops and everything, it keeps a very cohesive look, because one row, the loops are here, the next row, the loops are there. And it's not even, I mean, that's how it's programmed. So the loops here, where this row is the exact same. They're just stacked on top of each other. But the design has a flower here and the loops here. So the flower here and the loops here. And it doesn't nest up terribly much, but it's very cohesive across the quilt. So I wanted to keep, just like you see here, the sizing inside the row is very similar to the sizing between the rows. So even when I make it much larger, I want to keep that same proportional spacing in there. The spacing within here is very similar to how I shrunk it up and made the spacing between the rows. This is the Omni Natural White thread. Even with the dark blues on the front, there's lots of white, and it is flowers, and it is a springy, summery type of quilt. If it was dark blues and different type of fabric, I might have gone with gray. Just depends on the feel of the quilt, and this feel of the quilt is much summery and springy and flowers and floral, and so you don't see too many gray flowers. So not that you even see too many white flowers, but it just keeps it with the nature of the season, I guess, and just the feel is much lighter, where a gray would tend to make it a little heavier feel to it. But if the fabrics in this one were different, then I might choose gray to go with that. Her backing was totally pieced, large sections of the, let me just flip it over so we can show you that. All right, so the way Sara did this, she has one long seam straight down the middle. I don't have a problem with that. If I have a choice, I like to do horizontal seams, but it's not a problem. This one has both a straight vertical seam, but it also has lots of horizontal seams. And the only reason of choosing a horizontal seam over a vertical seam is just the buildup that creates. So right here where this seam is, you can kind of picture that as it's rolled on this bar, that section of the quilt is much larger. As a long arm quilter, we need to learn to deal with that. I don't like to dictate to the client which way the seam goes, because sometimes it's not economical to do a horizontal seam. Sometimes it's more economical to do a vertical seam. But if I have a backing that I can choose which way, maybe it's a square backing and I can choose whether I want that horizontal or that vertical, I will almost always choose a horizontal seam, because then that horizontal seam all hits the bar at once and it rotates in. It continues the same width or the size of the roll on the bar stays the same all the way across. With a vertical seam, you're continuing to build that seam right there. So just be sure that section of that quilt is going to be tighter because that's stitched. The other part can tend to drape a little bit, so just watch underneath your long arm that you're not getting drapey underneath there, that you're keeping it nice and taut, and using your side leaders to make sure everything is nice and straight. So she had a vertical seam here. She's got the large white print here, another large section here, but notice how she's added in, here's the blue, there's a blue, she's done green up there and green down here. Now I did orient this this fabric, the flowers have a direction to them, so I made sure that this was towards the top of the quilt. I guess what I want to say is not tipped sideways. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted that vertical seam because I wanted these to be up. I mean, it's a square quilt, so I guess in the end it really doesn't matter. But personally when I loaded it with those flowers up straight. Now this one, the backing fabric was larger than the quilt top. So I had probably about 6-8 inches on either side, which is more than I require. I don't mind that. I require 4 inches larger on every side. If it's larger than that, that just gives me even more leeway. It gives me more cushion, I want to say. But because this was pieced, and let me pull this in so you can see. Okay, so I have turned the quilt this direction. That vertical seam that you saw before is now running horizontal. These flowers that I said were faced straight up, I've now turned to the side, because what I want you to see is the piecing on this. I've kind of folded it here in the center. I wanted you to see the two ends. So on this end she had a green fabric, on this end she had a blue. She had a good 6 inches more larger than the quilt top. So with this one, I didn't want to start at the very top of that green, because if I did, that meant that I was only going to have about this much of the blue. All of that would have been extra. Where typically, if the backing is a wide backing or whatever, I will start the quilt as high up on that wide backing as I can, because then that gives the client a lot more usable fabric at the end. This one, I did not want to start it as high up on that green as I could, because that meant that the green I was going to have, you know, 12, 16 inches, and then down here I was only going to have 3 or 4, and I didn't think that that looked balanced. So I measured the quilt backing and subtracted the quilt top, figured up how many inches I had left on either side, and I did lay it out to make sure as well. And so then I actually started the quilt top further down on that backing so that I had very similar, I think I did okay, very similar widths in this top green fabric as with the bottom blue fabric, so that I didn't it didn't look unbalanced by having a whole lot at the top and just a little bit at the bottom, or the other way around. So just another trick there. Just it's not something that really matters in the quilting, but in your finished product, you might get your finished product, you know, pull it off the Longarm and go, oh, I really don't like the way I did that backing. I should have done something else. So just notice that, be aware of that. So if you're doing piece backings, kind of where to start on that. So who knew that I could talk that long just on a log cabin, a very simple block, but beautiful options in making a quilt top and the backing fabric and the pantograph. There's so much going on in this quilt. So Sara, you did a wonderful job on your quilt. Janet's 2 quilts are beautiful. This first one is Peaceful Baskets. We've seen this several times here recently, haven't we? And what I love is that each client has chosen a different pantograph for it. So if you are working on a Peaceful Baskets quilt and thinking about how you're going to long arm it or have someone long arm it for you, go back through my videos or even the newsletters and kind of compare pictures of different pantographs. We've seen lots of different ones, whether you like big open quilting, whether you like very tight dense quilting. I've had a little bit of everything, so you'll want to go back and do that. So Peaceful Baskets was the quilt along in the Sew Sampler box most of 2024, ended in spring of 2025 here. So each basket that you are seeing, what the pattern for that basket was in one of the monthly Sew Sampler boxes from the Fat Quarter Shop. This fabric line is Shoreline from Camille Roskelley. The blues, the greens, it's just so classy and just beautiful. So the blocks finished fairly big. I think they were like 18 inches. And then the sashing is very unique. It has a well, actually the background fabric here is a white on white. It's got little polka dots on it. So in the sashing where you're seeing the blue polka dots, that same design is in the background fabric, except it's just a white on white. So the sashing is a white with the blue polka dot. And then these stars that you're seeing as cornerstones, they're actually created by adding easy corner triangles on all of these long sashing pieces. And then you have a square and a square block here. So when you add your sashing together, then you get that secondary star pattern. Very, very fun. So those are on all the cornerstones in between the blocks and also at the very edge. This is 12 blocks because it was a 1-year quilt along, and just a beautiful quilt. The quilt measures 66 by 86. Let me pull in the backing so you can see that. The backing fabric one was Camille Roskelley's larger floral. The darker blues are more prominent in this one. I like the boldness of this quilt, of this backing fabric. It's very, very pretty. So the thread that I used on this one is the Omni Natural White thread, and hopefully you can see the pantograph there. This is Knit 1 Purl 2. I love this pantograph. So how this one stitches out is you start with 4 swirls. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the pantograph echoes those swirls again, going around them as it gets back to the top part. It then echoes it again. 1, 2, 3, and then it starts into the 4 swirls again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then it echoes those swirls. 1, 2, 3, 4, comes to a point, echoes that again, 1, 2, 3, and then it goes to the next swirl. So all of the swirls are facing this direction. I think it just adds lots of nice texture, a lot of nice curvature and flowiness. Without adding another floral on top of this, the pantograph or the fabrics have a lot of florals in them, polka dots, you've got stripes, you've got a little bit of everything. But this pantograph, instead of adding floral on top, we're just adding some swirly texture, very pretty. This one does, stitching this pantograph out, you can make it much smaller. I've done some of my own quilts where I've made it really, really tiny. Right here, it probably measures about 6 inches tall is how tall I did it. So about as big as my hand, maybe 6, 7 inches tall. Kind of nice and swirly, but it's a great coverage, even at this size. Nice coverage. You've got those loops in there, and then they're echoed 3 times. So you're getting a lot of nice texture. And in that natural white thread, it blends in so nicely with the background fabric. And you're really, this is one of those quilts that when you first see it, you're going to see the baskets, you're going to see the fabrics. And when you get in closer, then you see the pantograph on this one. So very beautiful. I know Janet's going to love this one. Janet's second quilt measures 74 by 90. This pantograph is called Whirlwind, and I did print off the cover photo for you to see. This is an It's So Emma pattern, and this was designed by Jocelyn, and there is the pattern. Very pretty. So the fabrics that you're seeing on the pattern cover are the same ones that Janet used in hers. This pattern, or this fabric line, is called Petal Power. This is done by Moda, and it was designed by me and my sister's designs. So bright summery fabrics, pinks and purples, and the turquoise and the very bright yellow colors, and so pretty. So I hope you can see these are nice big blocks. So let me pull this down here. You have 2 blocks, 2 big blocks made up of much smaller blocks. So in this block, each block is made with 4 quadrants. And when you put those 4 quadrants together, then you're getting the secondary design of a star in this one. I just love that. In this one, 4 quadrants are put together. You can see each one of the fabrics is different in the 4 quadrants. When you put those 4 quadrants together, then you get this secondary design of a pinwheel inside the block. This is not created on its own. This is the block here. And then this is the block. You can see the same fabrics are used within each quadrant. So that is what is making the block. Then you join those 4 quadrants together, and you're getting that secondary design here. You're getting that secondary design here. Now the other thing that I noticed with this pattern is every one of these star blocks is the same. Same fabrics, the orange, the purple, the pink, and the turquoise. But what happens as you are doing those through the quilt, you can see that same one down here, same fabrics, but the block is turned. So here the orange is in the top left, here the purple is in the top left, but it's made exactly the same way. It's always done this way. So the orange, the purple, the pink, and the turquoise. So orange, purple, pink, and turquoise. The bigger blocks here, the star one, if you want to say, the pinwheel, those are then alternated. And you'll have to go and look back at the larger pictures that I showed. You can see it a little bit in this, but you get those secondary designs showing up where you get these long diagonal lines. So you'll have to go back and look at the big pictures at the beginning of this section where you can see, and you might be able to see it here as well. So fun, so fun. So then here in this block, again, 4 quadrants, we have the pink, and then we have the lime green, the turquoise, and then the yellow print. When you put those together, then you're getting that secondary pinwheel design right there in the middle. And again, those blocks are alternated. So a star, a pinwheel, a star, a pinwheel. The row below that is then the pinwheel, the star, the pinwheel, the star. But not only are you alternating the blocks, the bigger blocks, but then you're also rotating the blocks so that you get the fabrics in different areas. And then you're getting those nice big diagonal secondary patterns that go along with it. So pretty. I love designs like that. I love it when a designer has spent time in making a quilt that it's not complicated, but when you look at it, you get all these secondary designs, all these different intersections, and it makes it look so much more complicated than it is, but it's such a fun thing to make and to study is what I like to do. The background print that you're seeing is a white. Assume it's a Bella Solid or something like that. It is a white and not a tone on tone. And let me flip this over so you can see the backing fabric. And this is such a fun print. So some of this same print is done on the front, but in different colorways, in the yellow and in the turquoise. This one right here, the pink one with the pink background, is not on the front, but it's that same design. So same colors, it's all part of that same line. And I love that. You've got the same type of design, the same line, but this one was not used on the front from what I can tell. So nice big motifs, nice big floral, kind of your 70s kind of look it kind of reminds me of, but very, very pretty. I did this with 3 seams. So Janet just sent me the backing fabric and she said, I want you to put it together the way that you want the seams done best. And with the amount of fabric that was there, it was best to do it with 3 panels, all same width, length, I guess you want to say, and then so 2 seams. So that's the way I did this one. Size of this quilt, again, this one measured 74 by 90. So 74 wide. I could have done one long vertical seam. That would have been 40, you know, if it was regular yardage, 44 and 44. So by the time you're done, about 80. That would have given me about 6 inches. Not my favorite. I would prefer at least 8 inches extra. So if it measures 74, then I would hope for 82, and maybe you could get that by doing a vertical seam. The amount of fabric that she sent, it was much better to do 3 horizontal sections, so that meant 2 seams, and no problem there. Worked out really, really nice. So pantograph on this one, Janet chose Daisy Delight, and we took the inspiration from the fabric that was on the back. That's where you can see the bigger floral prints. You do have that same floral in the goldish color here and in the turquoise here. Like I mentioned, it's that same large floral print, but you really notice it more on the back, the size of those flowers. And that's where you're really seeing the total design. So that's where we took our inspiration. Daisy Delight is a nice big flower. And again, I made it about the size of my fist is what you're seeing. So it's a 6-petaled flower. All the petals are nicely shaped, a point at the end, not a super pointy point, but it is a point. And you've got a nice circle in the middle, a nice button shape in the middle. And it does echo itself just around one of the petals to move to the next one. And then you're doing the next flower there, the next daisy, and again it just echoes one time. I mean, just kind of a travel stitch on the outside of that petal, then to get this to the next one. And let me pull this in so you can see what I'm talking about a little closer. So you can see the size of that design. Again, this is one of those pantographs. You could make it much smaller. And I do shrink my rows so that about the same amount of space between each row matches about the same space that is between the flowers in the row. That's how I like to space my designs. Very pretty, and I think you can see that white tone on tone as well. So I gave it lots of texture without being super tight. This is a pretty large quilt, 74 by 96, I think is what I said. And the pieces on this are nice and big, but the size of this design did fill in this negative space very nicely. And And I think a floral on here was very nice because on the front, the floral fabrics, for the most part, are larger florals. So because the pieces are cut, you lose some of that floral. You can see some of the other fabrics. You've got a gingham here. This one you can see the floral, the purple there, a little bit smaller, but most of it doesn't feel overly floral. But it does have a hint to the floral, especially from the backing fabric. So by doing this pantograph where you can see we're just adding a dimension in there, we're adding that floral dimension, and it shows up very nicely in all of that negative space. The border around the edge is a good 6-inch border, so we had lots of area to play with to put a nice pantograph in there for it to fill in that space very nicely. Now this pattern does come in several sizes. And 4 sizes: crib, lap, twin, and queen. The one that Janet did is the twin size, so you could go even larger. That is a square quilt, 92 by 92. This is fat quarter friendly. Background borders, blocks. Yeah, and it says it is fat quarter friendly. And it for the crib quilt, it would take like 8 fat quarters. Queen one all the way up to yardage on those. So for the baby quilt, for the crib one, you can use fat quarters. If you're going into the larger sizes, you would need yardage and not just fat quarters. So very fun. Whirlwind quilt pattern. And there is that one. And you can see the pattern matches Janet's quilt. So very nice, Janet. You did a wonderful job. This is Susie's quilt, and she made this for a young family member. This is the Aviator pattern by Lella Boutique. Here is a copy of what the front of that looks like. This pattern is fat quarter friendly. So it says each block is 16 by 17 in order to make the pattern on the quilt that you see on the front of the pattern. You need 8 light fat quarters, 8 dark fat quarters, 5 yards of backing fabric, 2/3 yards of binding fabric, and then your batting. The finished quilt measures 64 by 68, and I know Suzie made hers a tad bit smaller than that. Hers is 47 by 67, so you can make it the size that you need. This is completely pieced. It is not appliqued. It's not foundation paper, anything like that. This is all pieced pattern. And the block, you can see, stops right here at the tip from what yeah, okay. Suzie has used all the same color backing fabric for all of her airplanes. You can see in the pattern how this one was done with different backgrounds. I love both. Really changes the pattern up some, but it's just really, really nice. So, and also notice on this one that all of the airplanes are in a grid fashion, so side by side, one on top of another. And I do believe this is the same pattern. In looking at it, well, it may be just a tad bit different. So maybe this isn't the exact pattern that she used. There are several airplane patterns out there. Some of the differences that I notice is this one on Suzie's, it has a pointed tip to the airplanes. Her airplanes look they look a little smaller than what is listed in this pattern. And also on the tail of hers, this one is just a straight piece, where on the tail of this one, it does go in a little bit at the very center of the tail. So this may not be the exact pattern that she used. So this is the one I found right away. I thought it looked the same, but obviously the wings are much wider on this one as well than the one Suzie did. And the other thing I was going to point out is that Suzie's is not done in a grid fashion, meaning the airplanes are staggered, and I kind of like that design also. So if I can find the pattern that Suzie actually used, or I'll ask her about it to be sure. But either way, if you're wanting to do an airplane quilt, there are lots and lots of patterns out there for airplane quilts. It seems to be a very popular theme to a young person's quilt. So the fabrics that she used, I don't have details about fabrics either. She did use some travel type fabrics, and I know she's made one of these before that I've quilted, and she used the same fabrics, but she's also alternated. So some of these are travel, compass, they say discover, adventure. This one has airplanes in it. This one is the same colorway but with airplanes, but then she's thrown in a couple of oranges. She's thrown in a blue with just I don't know if this is part of the same line, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Some gold stars there, but then she's done some orange ones here. This one is just a tan color, so you don't have to have travel themed. There are lots of fun prints out there though. So your favorite one, and like I said, this pattern that I just showed you from Lella Boutique, it is fat quarter friendly. I would kind of assume that this one is too, but here Suzie has used all the same background fabric instead of alternating with different ones, and I like that. She's done a small border around the outside edge, just a dark border, and then her backing fabric, let me flip it this way, she pieced it together, all different sections of some of that travel print done in large pieces. This is a blue, almost like a mottled type of blue, not quite a grunge, more of a modeling type of one. So all different fabrics there on the back, and you can see some of that. Very, very nice. All right, for the pantograph, this is called Floating Clouds. Let me pull this in close. Floating Clouds, I like this one with the airplanes. Kind of, you got all the cloud features, and it just feels like, especially with her background fabric that is that lighter blue sky color, I really like this this cloud feature. And this one, it does rows. These rows are about 4 inches tall, and then it nests up nicely with the next row. I did use the Omni Blue Ice thread on this one, and so that is a kind of a slate blue color, actually about the same color as the background fabric that you're seeing right there. Blended really nice with that one. I did wind my own bobbins with this one so that we had that same light blue color on the back. That blended very nicely as well. Very, very pretty. I like the floating clouds. I used this recently on the temperature quilt, if you remember that from a couple months back. It worked nicely on temperature quilt as well. Lots of nice texture, big bubbly clouds, kind of a clamshell type of shape, but just circles that then the cloud feature. So it's very, very pretty. Suzie did a wonderful job. They're going to enjoy this one. Thank you for joining me today. If you are in need of Longarm quilting services, my information is down below. You can download the Longarm order form and instructions there. It gives you all the information you need to know about how to get a quilt to me for Longarm quilting. And I will be back here next week because every quilt is worth finishing. We'll see you then.